Hello and welcome to the Sci-Fi Christian Book Reviews, brought to you by the Sci-Fi-Christian.com. I'm Bendy Bono, here to talk to you today about Philip K. Dick's novel, Eye in the Sky. This was a kind of an interesting read for me, just as kind of a preamble before we get into the material of the book itself. Because earlier this year, maybe it was end of last year or sometime, Amazon had a day or a weekend or whatever where they put a ton of Philip K. Dick books on sale for like $2 each, and so I snatched up a ton of them for the Kindle, and I've kind of been slowly reading one or two here. Like I just read Flow My Tears and did a review of that about a week or so ago, and now read Eye in the Sky, and so now, I have a few more that I haven't read, but I don't think I'm going to read any more of his just yet, so I kind of been parsing them out a little bit. But I've had all these books there, and for the most part, I had thought that I had not read any of them before. I thought these were all new Philip K. Dick books for me. I have read a handful of his in the past, including some of his short stories, but I thought, nope, I'm getting all new stuff, super cheap, this is going to be great. And I thought that about Eye in the Sky as well, until I started to get about a third of the way into it, and I realized this book seems a little familiar. And as I kept reading, I had more and more of those moments, and by about the last 25% of the book, realized, yeah, I've read this one before. Completely forgot about it. I don't even think I have my copy anymore. I think I probably sold it to a used bookstore or something a while back when I was purging out books I didn't think I was gonna read again, but much to my surprise, despite thinking I was done with this one, it turns out that I have inadvertently done a reread without even intending to. I have no idea what I thought of this book the first time around, because besides being convinced that I have read it before, my recollection of that first read it doesn't really go much farther than that. So I guess we'll say first read review was forgettable. I don't know any other way to put it than that. Apparently I found this book quite forgettable the first time around because I had no memory of it. I have a memory of when I was a kid looking at my dad's bookshelf and finding a couple instances where he had multiple copies of the same book. Well, I shouldn't say multiple, 2 copies of the same book. And I remember asking him about it. He said, well, yeah, I just forgot I'd read it before, and then I was at the bookstore and bought another copy. And I remember thinking that was just ridiculous. Who could do such a thing? Who could just forget that they read a book once and then go out and buy another copy? Well, apparently this guy can too. So, maybe my memory's going, maybe I've just read too many books, but who knows? Anyway, wound up reading Eye in the Sky for a second time. So what did I think of it this time? If the first time was forgettable, because I have no memory of it, what would I say about it this time around? I liked this book a lot, actually. I thought it was very perceptive. I thought it was maybe a bit more psychological than a lot of Philip K. Dick's books. What I mean by that is that the themes are maybe less about crazy stuff going on out here and more about the human condition than they are in some of his stuff. But I think that before I get into some more of my thoughts on the book, it's important to clear up what this book is about, okay? If you're going to read it, I think you should know what it's about, because if you pick up a copy, look at the title, and read the description of the back, you're going to read a description that sounds like a really interesting book and sounds like it would be a good Philip K. Dick book, but it's not the book you're about to read. I'm going to get into a mild spoiler here, something you find out about a third of the way through the book. Even if you're not a fan of spoilers at all, I'd encourage you to stick around for this one, because I think that the book will be better if you know this going in. Whereas I think that if you read the back cover or whatever, you're just going to be confused, and you're going to think you're reading a book that you're actually not. Okay, so spoiler warning, but really don't bow out. You should hear this spoiler. I'm not going to ruin the entire book, but I'm going to spoil something a third of the way in, like I said, and the book will be better if you know it. Okay, so the back of the book implies that there's this kind of industrial accident, or I guess it's not so much industrial, there's people are at this scientific research facility, and there's an accident, and they find themselves in a parallel universe where it's kind of the worst picture of the Bible brought to life, so you do any little sin and you're instantly punished with some type of plague or whatever. You're in this crazy, for lack of a better term, Old Testament style world where God is very, very just and quick to dole out his vengeance against those who offend him. And this is backed up by the title, Eye in the Sky, which I won't really get into why that fits, but as you get into this world, you'll see that that title seems to imply that this book is going to be about exploring that type of world where religion is extraordinarily literal, sin and punishment are extraordinarily literal, and it's fascinating and everything. Okay, so that would make a really interesting book, exploring that type of world, and that would be a great Philip K. Dick book. And for the first third or so of this book, that's what it is. But then something happens and you realize that's not what this book is about at all. So if you think that's what you're reading, you're going to get a third of the way into this book and be really confused and probably disappointed when it takes a rather abrupt shift away from that world entirely. And we never come back to that theme of kind of ultra-literal, ultra-fundamentalist religion come to life and taken over the world. We never come back to that after the first third of the book, because what we learn is that, and here's your spoiler that you should stick around for, is that when this scientific accident happens at the beginning of the book, there's like 8 people involved. And what the characters eventually realize is that they're actually in the mind of one of the 8 people who was in the accident with them. And he's kind of this crazy old nut who, and then he has a bunch of screwed up racial stereotypes. So the guy, the black character who is in the accident with them, starts to conform to these stereotypes because they're what this guy's world would be. And he believes in a geocentric universe, so the world is flat, and you discover all these features or whatever about the world because it's his projection of his interior life into an alternate universe, and that's where the characters are. And eventually, what happens at the third of the way through the book is that they make their way out of that world, I won't tell you how, and into another world that's another projection of one of the people in their party was in the accident, and on it goes like that, okay? So what we have then is an abrupt shift in what this book is actually about. Because up until that point, it seems like it's going to be Philip K. Dick exploring what would an ultra-literal, ultra-fundamentalist view of the world look like if all of those interior convictions were expressed out in an alternate universe. And that seems very much like a book you would write. I mean, if you've read enough Philip K. Dick, he's very interested in things like alternate realities, he's very interested in religion, and on it goes. So it seems to fit. But what he's actually writing is a novel about our interior lives exposed. He's writing a novel about what would happen if the way that you looked at the world, your subconscious convictions, the things that you believe that maybe are irrational, okay? Maybe the racism that you have inside of you that you aren't even maybe entirely aware of, but it's there? What if all of those things were projected out into an actual universe and became normative for everybody? And we see several iterations of this throughout the book. Okay, that's a really fascinating novel, but it's not the novel that is promised on the back cover. Okay, so that's why you should, if you've stuck around this far, you maybe getting the picture of what I'm saying, where I say don't read the description on the back cover, because it's not going to tell you the type of book you're in. You're not reading a book about Old Testament religion run amok in the world. You're reading a book about interior lives and interior psychology being projected into various parallel universes. Still very much Philip K. Dick, but very different than what it seems like you're reading at the beginning. Okay. Now, given that we now realize what type of book we're in, does he do a good job with it? For the most part, yes. I found the insights once it kind of clicked for me what type of book I was reading, and once I kind of made the jump I just outlined for you, I found this book very profound in a lot of ways. I thought his insights into the human condition were very brilliant, and it really makes you think, because you are given these visions of worlds that are so obviously screwed up and so obviously out of whack. And then, at least for me, I can start thinking, well, what would my world look like, you know, if it was projected out like this? And, what would that be a good place to live? Probably not. I mean, for all of us, if you think about what would your interior life be like for everyone to live in, that's a very frightening thought when it comes right down to it. At least for the other people in the world, if not for yourself. And what Philip K. Dick really does a great job of is taking that theme and showing it to you in different ways, showing various different variations of it, and really making you think about what that experience would be like. So it becomes a very introspective reading experience if you let it. And that's not something I always get from Philip K. Dick, and I found it quite refreshing from a lot of his other stuff, where, not that his other stuff is bad by any means, don't get me wrong, it makes you think about the world out there, about the nature of reality and time and blah, 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 blah. But this made me think about myself, and that's not something I necessarily expect from Philip K. Dick. So very well done novel. For the most part, well paced, well written. You know, I've kind of come to accept that Philip K. Dick is not a great character person. To me, and maybe if you're a hardcore Philip K. Dick fan, you completely disagree with this or whatever, and you can tell me where I'm wrong in the comments, but to me all of his characters kind of blend together after a while, and that's very much the case here. The book kind of runs out of steam towards the end, you know, in the last chapter or two, but nothing too major. For the most part, this is a very fascinating exploration of internal worlds. The plot keeps you interested. You know, if you like Philip K. Dick, I think that as long as you know what type of book you're reading, this is definitely one I would recommend. I enjoyed it a lot. Hopefully I won't forget it again this time. But I thought it was very profound, very thought-provoking, very introspective. So I'm going to give it 4 stars out of 5. You know, a few flaws here or there that are kind of typical for him. Not an absolute masterpiece in terms of Philip K. Dick's stuff. You know, it's not as good as Ubik or some of those others. But I would maybe put it on the tier below those, you know. So if you've got his best stuff and then some of his weaker stuff, like I found Flow My Tears to be pretty weak in places. This is a lot. This is somewhere in between the two. So 4 stars out of 5. Know what you're reading, and if you do that, I think you're going to enjoy it a lot. I know I certainly did. So that's all for now. I'm Benny Bono, and this is the Sci-Fi Christian Book Reviews.